Hey everybody, my name is Michael Adam Berry. I'm a developer. I mainly do a lot of front-end stuff, and then I really love to do like data visualization projects and different things like that. I'm fairly new to Svelte. I just first heard about it for the first time during the V3 release, and at the time I was pretty deep in the weeds of like really digging into React hooks. So I wasn't really stoked about the idea of like, wow, I don't really want to learn a new framework, but the more I heard about it, the more it seemed like it was going to solve a lot of the pain points that I specifically was facing. A lot of those especially being finding kind of difficult within React to do some what felt like should be like pretty simple animations and different things like that. So I would find myself using a lot of refs and ejecting a lot. And so yeah, I basically gave it a shot, and now I pretty much have been building everything in this, and over the holidays we did my blog and website to use Svelte.
At work too?
Huh?
At work too?
Yeah.
Really?
So, like I said, this is mainly what I do. These are some of the projects personal projects that I've built before. There's a set list project that sizes performance history based on like the size of the orb, and these are pieces of a data dashboard project. So the goals of the talk basically today, like I said, I consider myself very much a beginner with Svelte, but I do, so I want to preface it with that, but the goal is sort of twofold. The first is for if there are any other beginners here to sort of see my approach and how I went about creating something, the problems that I've solved using Svelte, and hopefully it'll be something inspire you to go make some dope shit. And then for advanced folks, for contributors, for people, for maintainers of Svelte to see how newbies are approaching it from the documentation, how I went about building my first project, to see how that process unfolds out in the wild. So I do need to say before I start that the source of the inspiration is really important for me to say today, especially because at least one of the people who made it is here, and I don't want him to think that I just ripped it off without acknowledging him. So this is a project that was in the Upshot. It's a Game of Thrones make your own chart project. And basically what it allows a user to do is to plot each character from Game of Thrones on an X-Y axis based on how beautiful on the Y-axis they are and how good they are on the X-axis. So I was really kind of, I was really pretty deep into to the series at that point. So I thought it was really cool just as a fan of the show, and then also as someone interested in data visualizations and infographics. I thought it was a really interesting use and play on the idea of using the tools that viewers recognize to understand data, to include them in that process as a means to collect that data. Because essentially what this is actually is like a survey, right? It's but instead of, it's collecting the same sort of data that could be collected in a form with a bunch of text inputs or drop downs or whatever. But instead you're including them to sort of build the chart and then visually map how they think candidates should line up. So it seemed like a great place to start for once I'd worked through the Svelte tutorial to sort of try to recreate this with a different, take a new spin on this for another group that has sort of relative values to sort of crowdsource to get information about relative values like morality or beauty. And I don't know if you know, but it's an election year, and some of these people have since dropped out. But at the time that I made this, there were about over 20 candidates still in the election. So I decided to sort of recreate it with, instead of beauty and morality, for the ideas of electability and likability. Because if you've been following, I'm sure you've read or heard or seen in the news that many voters say that electability is among one of their most paramount concerns when choosing a candidate in the Democratic primary. How about Iowa yesterday? I don't know, they even announced
They've started to.
They
like
did?
2 hours ago.
Oh, good. Right on time.
Yeah.
Live feed.
Yeah, so I guess right now I'll just sort of, this is basically what I kind of designed, the things that I needed to accomplish with the application. I wanted to be able to handle some sense of some user authentication. I wanted to be able to accept the user input, in this case click events, to render the results in a pleasing way, allow users to edit those results, save user submissions, render a comparison of user data with the mean total of submissions. So to compare what the user did to what the average day everyone's did. Cool. So the tools I choose to do this, I just whipped up like a Firebase backend, basically. If you're not familiar, it's a cloud platform by Google. It's free for the most part until you go viral and blow up. You know, some of the concerns I wasn't too concerned about, and yeah, it made authentication super easy. They have a NoSQL cloud database that is really easy to configure. Cool. So before I talk you through the sort of components that I made, I guess we can just sort of demo the application. I'll sort of let you guys see what it would. So this assumes I'm already logged in, so I'll go in and log out. Cool. So all that's handled through Firebase, one of the biggest pros to that. And then we have some text. We have a link to the original inspiration. And then we can get started. So obviously I'm just going to whip through this. These don't at all reflect my personal. But this was made really easy, as you can imagine, by many of the transition libraries that come free for Svelte. So the transition in to be able to use the fly and the scale methods, and then some easing functions to create those animations seamlessly. So here's our results page of what we entered. So it looks like I've chosen a very swaggering Joe Biden because he won, and then a disappointing Tom Steyer, who I'd say can't beat Trump, and then similarly, oh wow, Tulsi Gabbard is my favorite, and Bernie Sanders is here. Cool. So and then we have some tables here, and these use D3 interpolation functions to render color in descending order, and then this is the editable portion. So this allows us to say, oh, I didn't actually want Biden. I wanted Warren, and then because of all this data is within a reactively declared variable, the data automatically updates in the interface. Cool. So now we can submit the data, which I think this UI design was bad because people keep forgetting to do this part. And now we can see how our rating lined up with all the other averages of how each candidate was viewed by everyone else. So yeah, that's basically the application, how it works. So how I went about doing this. So this is the essentially the primary component. The app component, we declare some reactive variables, obviously the data. We have some conditional logic. If the user is signed in, we render a landing page. And then we also keep track of the status of the application to either render the plot for the users to plot their data, or to render the score. And then within the score component lives the functionality to submit to the database and render the comparison screen. So the plot utilizes the on element directive to listen to pointer events on the board element. And then the built-in transitions, fly and scale, create animations with predefined easing functions. And it updates candidate data with the XY coordinates and updates status when the last candidate is clicked on in order to render the score. Cool. So yeah, this is kind of where most of the logic takes place in terms of really doing most of the scaling functions and transforming the DOM positions into a score. and also some of those interpolation functions for like color values and different things like that. And yeah, this also makes use of the each oops, to render the results of these candidate reactive variables to implement and manage the state. Cool, yeah, calculates the average. It seems pretty straightforward, but you're welcome to go. All this code is open source, so you're welcome to check it out. It was Michael Adam Barry. It's my GitHub name. And I don't know if I'll take this project any further. If anybody's interested in working on it, collaborating, has any ideas, I'd be happy to talk to you guys about it. Obviously, it's probably going to be a pretty long process, so there's different things that we could do, different sorts of visualizations or projects we could work on surrounding the ongoing primary. One thing the app doesn't do at all is any routing. So I played around a little bit with the SPA hash router package, which is great. Also, once I redid my website and blog, I used Sapper, and that was awesome as well. So if it builds out in functionality from here, I think I'd probably want to use Sapper. And yeah, these are just some ideas that I have of ways that it could be expanded upon if possible. But the goal is essentially just to be a fun way for users to be able to play around and also maybe engage some people around the election. Yeah, these are just my website. This is the project URL, my GitHub, and you can follow me on Twitter if you want. But thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for letting me present.